All right, we're going to restart the whole video. I'm going to restart the call. Welcome back to another week on the D3 Datacast. I'm Zach Snyder, joined as always by Matt Snyder. Please click the subscribe button here on YouTube if you haven't already. That helps us grow the channel. You can also connect with us at facebook.com/D3Datacast and on Twitter at D3Datacast. Matt, it was a crazy week in and around the top 25. Behind me, I've got the gym at Heidelberg, who pulled off a big, convincing win over then second-ranked Mount Union. We'll see what happens when the new poll comes out for this week. But that wasn't all that we saw this week, and especially on Saturday, it was a crazy week. And it doesn't seem like it gets any easier week by week for you top 25 voters.
Yeah, it was a challenging week. You just said number 2 went down. Number 6, WPI, lost to Hamilton by 9. Number 7, Johns Hopkins, lost to Muhlenberg by 7. Number 9, Mary Hardin Baylor, lost another game to Concordia's Texas. They lost that one by 4. Elmhurst, who was number 11, lost to Carthage. Yeah, so especially in the top 10, there were upsets kind of across the board, and that makes it a challenging week to be a top 25 voter. But I did a ballot this week, and I think we can transition over to looking at that right now.
Yeah, just one thing to add though here. Just a little teaser for coming attractions. Even though it doesn't seem like we're getting any additional clarity here as we've gotten into 3-4 weeks here of the season, we do have a fun segment coming up that we've been looking forward to the last couple of weeks as we've had this idea. We're going to be doing a Pool C fantasy draft. So for those of you who are big Pool C fans, you're going to want to stay tuned. We're gonna do a little contest here, do our early season Pool C fantasy draft, and then we'll go back once the bids are actually awarded and see how we did. But in the meantime, Matt still has to come up with a top 25 ballot. So Matt, why don't you go through what you came up with for this week?
Yeah, so like I said, not an easy week for the voters, or at least for myself. I don't know how the other folks are going to be doing. But here is a look at the ballot that I am about to submit. I have not officially submitted this ballot yet, but I'm posting it here. So this is the one I'm going to submit. And for me, at the top, there's not a whole lot of changes. UW La Crosse, St. Joseph, and Christopher Newport were all top teams that I had last week. But with some of those losses that I mentioned happening in and around the top 10, some things really shuffled for me. Elmhurst, for example, completely fell out of my rankings. They had 2 losses this week. WPI completely fell out of my rankings after taking what I thought was a not good loss this week. And so some things really shook around. I would say I feel pretty good about maybe the first half of my ballot, and I feel very less comfortable with the second half of my ballot. Maybe through Calvin at 14, St. Thomas 15, that kind of range I feel okay with. There's still some question marks I have about some teams. Like we just said, Mount Union lost to Heidelberg. Mount Union was ranked number 2 by the voters. I only dropped them to number 8. Heidelberg was a team that was very close to making my ballot. And I ultimately didn't want to penalize Mount Union too much in their first loss for that game. That might turn out to be, an okay looking loss by the end of it. And once you get too far down this list, you're starting to run into teams with losses, with maybe questionable losses or some a loss or two and not very many good wins among the mix. So Mount Union is a team I kept in the top 10, even though they lost. I'm maybe a little bit still uncomfortably high. I didn't know what to do with Johns Hopkins. I kept them in at 18. I was going back and forth. This week they had lost to, let me get the team right, Muhlenberg. They lost by 7. And that's it's not the worst loss in the world, definitely. But it's one that if you're going to be in the top 10, you probably don't want to lose that game. But Johns Hopkins still has the very convincing win against Mary Washington on their resume. And so that was a separating factor for me that kind of kept them up a little bit. Some of these other teams, you're struggling to find a win that's quite that good. Nazareth, for example, came in next at number 19. And to me, their best win is maybe at Oswego State, who also took a tumble for me after losing. So that's a win that looks less good. All this to say, those last 10 spots or so, I think for myself and different voters could go a number of different ways. I don't know that there's one right way, one right answer at this point. There's a lot of teams in that mix. 1 loss, 2 losses, trying to find a good win or two in there. I do want to call out number 22 for me, NYU. Did make my ballot. I really wasn't sure what to do with them. They had played almost no good teams. They're if you look on their Massey index, their schedule was largely teams in the 300s of the Massey rating, so kind of like the bottom 25-ish% of Division Three. They had a win over Farmingdale State that looked good, and then this week they had a very convincing win against Yeshiva. Now I don't think Farmingdale or Yeshiva, both of the Skyline, are top-notch teams by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they're reasonable teams. I think they're either in the top 100 or kind of on the fringes of the top 100, and that's kind of my very, very thumb in the air cutoff line between what's kind of like a good team and what's maybe a mediocre team. And they have two convincing wins there. So the efficiency ratings that I run really likes NYU. I decided to take a flyer on them at number 22. I will definitely be keeping an eye on them and would like to see them start playing, getting into UAA season for sure. Really interested to see what they're going to do there. That conference looks strong, but I felt okay to put them in this week, especially with some of the uncertainty going around elsewhere. But I think that's kind of all I have to say right now. Maybe another interesting thing is I actually bumped Calvin up 3 spots, and they had an 0-1 week, which is maybe interesting. I think a couple things went into play there. One, like we said, a bunch of teams kind of fell out of that top 10 spot and fell past, where Calvin was at 17 for me. And their one loss was a 1-point loss on the road to Wheaton, who I have as theirs a number 12 team. And to me, a 1-point road loss doesn't automatically mean you should drop. For me, that's actually tough to say a loss is a positive result, but that's a loss that kind of reinforces to me their position in the poll where they were had by the voters in that kind of number 17 range or where I had them. That's kind of a legitimate spot for them. So based on what happened around them, I felt okay. I didn't intentionally raise them up after that result, but the way things fell, it kind of happened that way. So maybe an interesting thing. We'll have to see what other people think about that, but that's where I fell on them. And that's where I fall on the poll.
Excellent. Looking forward to seeing how the full poll turns out when it's released, probably Monday evening, typically when we see the next week's poll.
This will be an interesting one. I think there'll be a long list of others receiving vote teams and others receiving vote categories. And just because 16 through 25, we're going to go a million different ways, the whole voting group. So we'll see a lot of teams. It'll be interesting to see which ones make it.
So Matt, if you're ready to hit the simulate to end of season button, we can move into what we have made the focus of this episode, and that is our Pool C fantasy draft.
Yeah, so moving over, here's kind of the rules we set for ourselves. We're each going to pick 10 teams, and that's going to give us the 20 Pool C teams that you can count on by the end of the year. We're going to alternate our picks, and we're going to do a snake draft. So I guess, did we decide who's going first?
I think you're going first.
Okay, I'm going to go first, and then you'll get 2 picks, then I'll get 2 picks. We'll go back and forth. And then our scoring system,
we'll alternate and then just double up 10, 11.
Oh, after pick 10. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
So I'll pick 10th and 11th, and then you'll pick 12th.
Okay.
So that evens out the difference for going first versus second.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
And then we're going to score this based on who eventually makes the NCAA tournament at the end of the year. So we're going to get 3 points for a team that we correctly pick as Pool C. If we pick the team as Pool C and they're Pool A, we're going to get 1 point. So that'll give us a little bit of varying strategies here. You feeling ready to start, Zach?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to transition our scene.
Yeah, so the pressure goes on you with the very first pick.
All right. I'm going to take us away from the slide here. We're going to make our picks, and then we're going to bring them back up. Since we're low budget technology, we don't have the technology to show the picks as we pick them.
Yeah, and we're doing this as we're recording. We haven't shared each other's list, or we haven't made the picks ahead of time. So this is playing out live. Live recorded.
You're going to write these down, Zach, right, as we go?
Yeah, I got it.
My first pick, I'm going to pick Emory out of the UAA. Were that your first pick too?
Number one on my board was Emory.
All right, so we may have a similar strategy here. UAA is going to be stacked this year. They're going to have lots of opportunities to pick regionally ranked wins. They could be the UAA champ, so that would be difficult. But with so many good teams, I feel like, someone's going to be Pool C. So it could be, it could be Emory. And I just like the way that their season has started. I like the way that their season is shaped up. I think they're going to have an opportunity for tons of regionally ranked wins. So I am taking Emory off the board, number 1.
You ruined my draft right off the bat. Okay, so for my first pick, second overall, thinking very similarly, but I'll just transition that from the UAA to the NESCAC, and I will go with Williams. So similar to you picking Emory, very good. Maybe Williams wins the NESCAC, but I think there's enough depth there that there's certainly a few teams that could. So
Yeah.
a good chance that they don't end up in Pool C, and they don't, and then have to end up in Pool C and still have a very good resume. So I am going to go with Williams.
All right. Yeah, they're probably the NESCAC favorite at this point, but with, like you said, it's such a deep league, they could easily lose in the tournament.
Right. Yeah. It's such a deep league. Even the favorite may not be a greater than 50% chance of winning. So we'll go with them.
They were definitely on my top 20 board, so we're thinking similarly. So my second pick, it's back to me now, right?
Yep.
My second pick, I'm going to go with Mary Washington. I think in the coast to coast, to me, Christopher Newport is definitely the favorite. So Mary Washington is not likely to win the Pool A, but I think that they're going to have enough regionally ranked wins, and I think I like the way their schedule has shaped up and will shape up to end the year. So I think their winning percentage could be there, and their strength of schedule could be there. So if they get enough of those ranked wins, I think they could be Pool C.
Excellent pick, Mary Watt.
They already own the Randolph-Macon win, which Randolph-Macon should probably be ranked in Region 6, and I think that could look like a good win.
Right. Yeah, Mary Washington was actually number 4 on my board.
Okay.
So we're not doing too far from each other so far. But with the 4th overall pick, my second pick, I'm similar to you with the first pick in Emory. I'm going to go with Rochester.
Okay.
Another UAA. You got the deep league, lots of chances to put up impressive results. Rochester's looked looked pretty good so far. I will take Rochester.
My next pick is going to be a program. I was just in their gym on Saturday. I'm going to pick Wheaton, Illinois. They're maybe at this point one of the favorites in the CCIW. They could definitely win that Pool A. But again, that's a league that is strong and deep. Wouldn't surprise me if Illinois Wesleyan won, or Elmhurst, or someone like a North Central could get hot again and win that tournament. I think Wheaton's going to have a strong strength of schedule. They've already started hot. They have a win over Calvin, who looks poised to be regionally ranked. They're going to pick up more regionally ranked wins in CCIW play. So assuming that either an upset happens or they don't win the Pool A, I'm going to go Wheaton, Pool C team.
I like it. All right, my next pick, I will go with Guilford out of the ODAC.
Ooh. They were next on my board. Back to me.
It's always great to steal someone's pick. You did it for me off the bat, so I'm feeling better now. Yes, back to you. Pick 7.
That was your first time you stole my next pick, but all of your picks have been on my board. Pick 7. So my 4th pick, I'm going to pick Swarthmore. They're probably going to go 1-2 in some order with Johns Hopkins in the Centennial Conference. They could very easily win the A, but assuming they don't win the Pool A, I really like their opportunity for a strong winning percentage. Using my silly projections that I have on the regional rankings data page, if you have ever been to that blog site, link will be in the description below. If you scroll down, I've done some fuzzy math at projecting kind of end of season results. And Swarthmore ends up with an 856 winning percentage. So that's going to look like a good winning percentage if they can get that strength of schedule in there, which I think they will. Notch in a couple of regionally ranked wins. They're going to be a pretty strong candidate for Pool C.
Okay, next up for me, you already mentioned them in the top 25 discussion. I will go with NYU.
Ooh.
Going with another strong UAA contender. So that's 8 picks in now. So you have one more, and then I'll make 2 in a row to make the turn from 10 to 11.
Okay. So I will take, at my pick 5, I will take Kane out of the NJAC. I think they're a little bit under the radar team. They've started the year 8-0, and I think that the league is going to be strong enough for them to get a good strength of schedule. I don't think their strength of schedule right now is that strong, but I think once they play the NJAC and what they've already accomplished, I think that's going to be good. I can see them being 800 winning percentage, 520-ish strength of schedule. And depending on how things fall out, they can maybe get 3 regionally ranked wins. So I think Kane is going to be a Pool C team.
Okay, let's see. I'm debating whether I keep true to my board or if I pull a little mid-draft shenanigans, knowing I've got back-to-back picks here. Okay, I'm gonna go for the shenanigans. Ready?
Okay.
With back-to-back picks, I'm gonna go back-to-back WIAC, Oshkosh, and Lacrosse. I feel like at this point, one of them is the favorite. I don't know which one. And whichever one it isn't figures to be in good Pool C shape. So I'll sacrifice 2 potential points in favor of feeling pretty good about 4 total points.
All right. I like it. They're both on my board. So far, none of the ones that you've picked are outside of my top 20. I don't know about
you had one that I
Okay.
did not. Yes.
Okay. My next pick, if we're ready for me,
Yep,
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
go. I'm gonna go back to the NESCAC and I'm gonna go to Middlebury. Similar reasons to what we've called out previously. I think Williams is probably the favorite there at this point. Middlebury could maybe win the Pool A. I'm maybe concerned that they won't. I mean, this is a silly thing to say. They've been good so far. I'm the thing I'm least confident about them is the winning percentage going to be high enough. I'm pretty sure it will be. So if they can get the winning percentage high enough, then I think they'll definitely be in the Pool C mix out of the NESCAC. So I'm pretty comfortable with Middlebury.
Okay, Middlebury it is. And I'm actually going to stay in the NESCAC and take Tufts.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, I did have
They're
them.
what you did not have them on your
No, I
list?
did. I thought I did, but I read wrong.
Okay. Yeah, Tufts is a team that I feel like doesn't really get their due. Maybe they're somewhat forgotten sometimes in the NESCAC, but they've been in our picks contest 1 or 2 times already, or and have showed up in some of our big games of November. And so I've had my eye on them a little bit, and I'm fairly impressed with what I've seen so far. So I think Tufts can make a run for Pool C here.
I'm just realizing how similar a bunch of my last several teams are. Okay, I'm going to go to the Landmark Conference, and I'm going to pick Scranton. They're, I mean, it's hard to say who's the conference favorite right now. I think maybe it might be Catholic, but and I considered taking Catholic in my top 20 as well. But I ultimately went with Scranton. I think it was their strength of schedule was looking like was going to be a little bit higher. My concern with Scranton is, are they going to have a good enough regionally ranked wins total to be competitive nationally? But assuming they can get there, I think that the rest of their criteria will look good.
All right. Okay, for my next pick, I am going to go Region 7 with John Carroll. I think at this point, it seems like all the transfers coming in are paying off, and it seems like they're not going to have a significant problem coming together as a team. I still don't think that they would be the favorite in the OAC, but they're going to be one of the contenders, and I think that resume is going to look good enough, especially at this point in the draft. I had them a little bit higher on my board, but we'll go with John Carroll.
So we're the next pick for me. What is this? Is this my eighth?
This is your 8th pick.
Eighth pick. I'm going to go with Stockton. I've already been to the NJAC once. I'm going to go back there. And I think one thing that stood out to me in the projected numbers is I think they have a good chance for lots of regionally ranked wins. And I think that's because in that region, what is it, Region 4, I think the NJAC is going to feature heavily throughout the year. So when they play conference games and they get conference wins, I think there are going to be a lot of regionally ranked wins in there. So I think NJAC teams are going to look pretty good come selection time and through the regional rankings. So again, if they can hang towards the top of that conference and, be number 1, 2, or 3. I think they're going to have the winning percentage to get there with several regionally ranked wins. So yeah, Stockton.
All right, I'm going to go with another NESCAC, and maybe this is a little bit of a hedge of my Tufts pick, but I'm going to go with Trinity, Connecticut.
My next pick is one I'm sort of nervous about, but sort of not nervous about. In the MAC Commonwealth, I'm going to go with Widener. Widener has one super quality win right now in Swarthmore, or one that looks super quality. That could be one that pays dividends down the line. They could have a good chance of winning lots of games in that conference if they're actually as good as they look. They've started out 6-2, and I think they're a pretty good team. And I think once the regional rankings come out, I think they're going to be one of those teams that maybe aren't receiving tons of attention in the top 25 necessarily, but when you look at the NCAA's criteria, winning percentage, strength of schedule, regionally ranked opponents, I think they're a team that's going to come out fairly positively in their region, and I think they're going to stack up well in those criteria in the Pool C candidacy.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so this is my final pick, and I'm making my final pick, and I get the 13th team on my board, which is Johns Hopkins. Okay. So you'd mentioned them in relation to Swarthmore. I did have Swarthmore a little bit higher on my board just because I feel like the chance of needing Pool C was maybe a little bit higher, but at this point, I think there's enough chance that that maybe they don't win the Pool A, and and even if they do, still 1 point out of my last pick, I feel like is worth it. So Johns Hopkins.
That's a good one. Yeah, it seems like Swarthmore, Johns Hopkins, one gets Pool A, one gets Pool C, and as long as someone doesn't crater, they're both in the tournament. All right, so at the risk of overusing the NJAC, I'm going to go with Rowan. I feel like, seriously, this is something I thought even last year through the regional ranking process and through the mock Pool C picks. It's a conference in a region that tends to do very well by the NCAA's criteria, better at a higher level than they do in, like a Massey ratings or a top 25 or a efficiency ratings. It's a quality league. It's not top tier elite. And there are good teams that can do well in that region, so they can pick up regionally ranked wins. And I don't think in Region 4 there's a ton of other competitions from other conferences like that. So I think the NJAC sits well to collect these sort of types of wins. The Mac Freedom could be in a similar position as well, but NJAC does well out of conference, and that's going to give them an advantage. So yeah, I think Rowan has a chance to be right there with the winning percentage, the strength of schedule, and collecting in conference regionally ranked wins. And as long as the committee values those similarly as they will, we could very well see another tournament with a Pool A and then 2 Pool Cs from the NJAC, at least one probably, unless there's so many losses in conference play that the winning percentages just don't end up there. I think a couple of these teams are going to get in or have a good chance. Obviously, it's early, and we're doing this way too early. We can't take this seriously, but it's the type of thing that you can already see happening as the NJAC kind of ruling Region 4 to a large degree.
Yeah, I think we were seeing similar things when we were looking at the NJAC, but we came to opposite conclusions or opposite strategies. I did have Rowan on my list. They were, just preparing for a 20-team draft. I made a list of 20, just knowing at worst case I'd be able to get 10 of those. I did have Rowan on my list at 15, but I know I did consider Stockton. I ended up just shying away from the NJAC completely because I feel like Stockton had separated themselves enough. They were probably a high enough favorite for the Pool A that I didn't want to go there. And then having that log jam, I just wasn't confident in exactly how it might play out. I lean towards some solid teams that might be more runner-up position than 3rd, 4th, 5th in the NJAC. So yeah, it's interesting that you figure someone's got to come out of it, but you're not exactly sure who it might be at this point.
Yeah. So I just put the Pool Cs on the board, so everyone can look at the picks that we just made. But yeah, going back to the NJAC, I think my my fear, kind of like you said, it's so early. I don't even know if that conference has started conference play, but with a few have started conference play, only 1 or 2 games in. You don't really know who's going to end up at the top or the middle or the bottom. Some of the teams I picked could lose a few games and be too far down the list to really be considered because the winning percentage is there. But yeah, it's just interesting how things are already shaping up, and you can kind of already tell conferences that might be in a good position to get a couple of teams and which ones might not be, surprisingly. Just out of curiosity, for the fun of it, how many teams do you have left on your list of 20 that did not get selected? And do you want to
I
name
have
any of them? Okay.
Yeah, I have 5 remaining. So the highest on my board of those was Mount Union
Mm-hmm.
because of just how deep it is at the top of the OAC, and even if you consider them the favorite, there's a lot of probably variability in how that all plays out. So they may end up needing a pool C. 16, I had Case Western Reserve kind of going into my strategy for the UAA, but one of my big problems with them is just looking at how Region 7 might stack up. And it's possible they have a hard time getting into the rankings or end up getting kind of blocked by someone ahead of them. So I didn't feel as good about them as I did some of the other UAA teams that I went with. After that, 17, I had Heidelberg, similar, with their results against Mount Union.
Yeah.
I think they can make a push in the OAC and into the Region 7 rankings. But I think Region 7 is going to be so deep, it's going to be hard to really get into the position where you can be up for consideration for that Pool C. So that's why they were a little bit lower on my list. And then you had a couple that were not on my board, but then you had Wheaton. They were 18th for me. They were the lowest one on my board that you took. And I agree with you completely on that one. The way that the early season of the CCIW has played out, I think that they have shown themselves to be a little bit further ahead than I think most people thought. And again, this is probably reading way too much into early results. And then so beyond that, the last two, St. Thomas, Texas, just getting towards the bottom of the board, I was looking at teams that would likely have very strong Pool C resumes, but there would be a chance that maybe they could get upset. And then rounding out my top 20, I did have Illinois Wesleyan there just because surely there will be another CCIW up for consideration at some point. They're the ones that I think have the most room to grow and can kind of emerge from that pack that is, maybe 5 teams deep in the CCIW at this point behind Wheaton.
Yep.
So what about you?
The teams that were left on my board, there was 3 of them. Mount Union, one of yours as well. To me, I had them at 15, partially because I still think, even after the loss, I still think maybe they're the favorite in that league, and they were maybe just too high of a Pool A contender for me to pick as a high Pool C. But they were definitely on the board there. The NJAC, I had Montclair State as another team that was on my board. I just started rolling with the NJAC, so I didn't want to take another one. But again, I think a few teams from that league are going to come out with stellar resumes by the committee. And then I was looking at the 20th team on my board was East Texas Baptist. The thing there will be the strength of schedule. I'm currently only projecting them for like a 5-10. And the projected strength of schedules at this point, I should clarify, are very hand wavy. So it could go. I have no idea even how far up or down that could go. But 5-10 would be a little bit on the lower side for the committee. But I think they have a chance to get 2 or 3 regionally ranked wins, maybe an 800 winning percentage. But that conference, could be a little bit of a meat grinder. I think there's a lot of good teams, maybe no great teams. So maybe an 80% winning percentage out of that conference is a little bit tough. And then teams that just missed my board, similar to yours, that I think are kind of high Pool A contenders would be like Christopher Newport, St. Joseph, Connecticut. I just didn't even want to consider for this exercise because there's no way they're not winning the Pool A from that conference, really. So, they're going to have a pretty good resume, but they're going to be a Pool A. Claremont Mud Scripps could be in the conversation, but I think they're the SCIAC favorite. St. Thomas, Texas, similarly. And then Randolph-Macon I maybe could have picked because there could very well be an ODAC upset. I don't even know that you would consider them a super strong favorite at this point. So maybe they could have made my top 20 if I had spent more time than maybe 20 minutes compiling my list. But yeah, there's several more teams that we didn't name will be in the mix. I'm sure tons of the ones that we did name will end up as Pool A's anyway. Don't count yourselves out if we didn't name your team at this point. But just an early silly look at who could be in Pool A contention for what's already happened to date and what we kind of crystal ball gazing project maybe could happen at the end of the year.
Yep. And just want to highlight some things that you've referenced here with the regional ranking data. So hopefully at this point, our loyal listeners are familiar with where you have efficiency ratings posted on that same site. And there will be a link down in the show description on YouTube. There's another link to regional ranking data where people can see the current season up to date winning percentage and strength of schedule, as well as the RROs. And those are presented kind of the up to today in region 1 through 10. And then if you scroll down, the data repeats, and it's, as you mentioned, it's kind of the projected through the rest of the season. And so anyway, that's something that people can start to look at. It's been silently updated for the last couple of weeks, but we wanted to use this Pool C fantasy draft as a way to officially kick off and let people know that that data is out there. It's being updated, and it's there for the current season. And now, maybe it's a little bit early to start looking at teams head to head in terms of their regional ranking data, but as we get into the season, just know that that data is already being compiled. It'll be continually updated, and it's there for your use. So find that link in the show description below, bookmark it, and make reference to it as we start to get into these real conversations about who are the Pool C contenders, how is Team A shaping up against Team B in terms of the head-to-head in how they might show up in regional rankings, or as we look across regions as those Pool C bids are up for grabs.
Yeah, I think the earliest you can really use any of this information to take seriously would maybe be around New Year's for the first time in the season, because teams are wrapping up their non-conference schedule at that point and moving into conference season. It's still very early to say anything definitive at that point. And then into January, you start seeing things take shape. And then once February hits, we'll start the NCAA's regional ranking cadence, where they'll do the regional rankings. I'll update my sheet, so we'll start getting those regionally ranked wins and losses on team pages. And then in February is really where you take this stuff very seriously. NCAA puts out the data. You can really see where teams are, and then you can start making, kind of mock Pool C selections based on actual NCAA data. And that's where you get really serious about who might be making the NCAA tournament and who's really going to want to win that Pool A, because it's just not happening for you based on, where you might be in the regional rankings. So from Pool C picks, we're going to transition over to last week's pick slate. And here's how we did. The first matchup, St. Joseph, was plus 1.5 against Tufts. They won by 20. Zach wins that one. Latorno against Hardin-Simmons. The line was plus 3. Hardin-Simmons won that game by 12. So we both missed that one. Everyone's favorite game, Asbury versus Warren Wilson. That was a cover for Asbury. They won 101-82. And Calvin at Wheaton. Wheaton was favored by the computer by 7 points. Wheaton won by 1, so Calvin covers that one. We both get it. And the game of the week ended up being a little bit of a snoozer. RPI was a 4.5 point underdogs at Williams, but they lost by 18. The Eafs took care of business there and won that one. We both got that one. So looking ahead to the standings, last week, Zach, you took the week 4-1. I was only 3-2, so you caught up a little bit. You're 9-11 against the computer on the year, and I'm 12-8.
I turned that 1-4 week around to a 4-1. So I'm looking at it 500 over the last 2 weeks.
Hope you all are playing along at home. Let us know how you did last week. And as we go into this week's picks, pick along with us. So this week's slate coming up for week 5. Here are the games. We'll go one by one. I'll just read the game and then you make your pick, Zach. How does that sound?
That sounds good.
Eastern at Hood. The computer likes Hood by 2.5 points. Who you got?
I have Hood in this one.
Taking Hood. I'm also going to take Hood. 2.5 at home. I think they're going to cover that. December 7, Roanoke at Washington and Lee. Roanoke is the 1.5 point road favorite.
Yeah, earlier in the week, as we were looking ahead for what our pick slate might be, this actually was a dead even game. And as the week's results came in, it moved to the 1.5 in Roanoke's favor. I think this is the type of game Washington and Lee will pick up maybe one or two times during the year. I don't know that I'm quite there with them yet to be able to pick that this specifically will be one. So I'm going to stick with Roanoke.
Yeah, Washington and Lee, I think has looked like a decent team this year. Roanoke's on the fringes of my top 25. Didn't quite include them, but they're right there, kind of in that next group. I'm also going to go with the Maroons. I think 1.5 points on the road is going to be a little bit too tight. I think they're the better team right now, and I'll take Roanoke. On December 7, we have John Carroll plus 8 points versus Mount Union.
As we get further into the season here, the previous year's data from uh, the efficiency ratings is getting worked out, and uh, even if there's a little bit left here, that's gonna, I think, weigh John Carroll down further than they deserve with so much turnover they've had with all the transfers coming in. So I think they're going to be a little bit underrated. I don't want to overreact to the loss that Mount Union suffered because I think they're really good. I think that John Carroll is still being a little bit underrated by the computers. So I will take the 8 points.
All right. I'm also going to be along the similar lines with John Carroll. I think the computer's not high enough on them. I think maybe I was a little bit slow on them this year, but I've caught them up. What are they on my ballot? Maybe number 9, and Mount Union was number
8.
8. I'm just talking out of my rear end right now, but that was probably close to where I had them. We just showed you a few slides ago. Yes, I had them back to back. So to that end, yeah, plus 8 on the road, that's probably too big of a gap that I see. I don't see it as that big right now. So I'll also go with John Carroll. The next game, I think you picked this one to give us a huge number. Hunter versus NYU plus 45. So Hunter plus 45 at NYU.
Yeah, I wanted to get a big number in there. Boy, you look at NYU beating Yeshiva by over 40, and it's really tempting, but I don't know. I could see NYU wanting to keep the gas in a game against a team like Yeshiva, who is of some actual quality. You don't know how Yeshiva, especially the way they can shoot from the outside, can put on a run. Um, in this matchup, I'm not so sure that NYU will be as keen to keep their foot on the gas. So with 45, that's such a big number. I'll go with Hunter.
So you know me, I'm usually a Hunter main, but in this case, I'm going to go NYU. We just saw them beat Yeshiva by 41. Hunter plays that fast-paced, fast-tempo style game. I think NYU is very well suited to play that game right along with them. In that Yeshiva game, I watched most of it. They were happy to get to the glass. They were happy to shoot the three. I think they're very athletic. They're very good with the ball on offense. I could, with that many possessions, I could easily see them beating Hunter by 45. So I'm going to go with the Violets. And then our D3 Datacast game of the week. It's Rochester at Wooster. Rochester is giving 3.5 points as the road favorite.
I usually love a home underdog, but Wooster let me down in a previous pick when they were hosting Mount Union. So we may have a little, fool me once, fool me twice situation here, but nonetheless, I'll stick with Wooster, getting 3.5 at home.
And I will pick against you on this one with Rochester. To me, they're, I think, one of the top 10 or so teams in Division Three. I haven't quite seen it from Worcester this year. I had some hopes of them being a fringe top 25 team. Right now, they're not in consideration for that spot for me at this moment. So 3.5 points wasn't a large enough spread. So I'm going to go against my own computer here. Rochester is going to cover the 3.5. Hope everyone gets a chance to play along with at home with us on these. That brings us to upset watch. We finally missed last week, Zach, as Middlebury took care of their win against Carnegie Mellon.
Carnegie
I
Mellon.
believe it was Carnegie
Yep.
Mellon. Yep. It was a good game. It was back and forth, very much so. A possible upset, but I think they won by about 6 points. Middlebury did. Um, so this week's upset watch is going to stick with the NESCAC. It's going to be Williams. Williams is probably going to come in around number 5-ish, if I could guess in the d3hoops.com poll. So they'll probably be a top 5 or 6 team against who will likely be unranked SUNY Oneonta. Oneonta is one of these early season sort of efficiency ratings darlings that I've seen from my spreadsheets, but they're a team that has won or largely won against teams who are not in the same class as Williams. So seeing them in this type of matchup will be interesting. I think the computer likes Williams by 2, 3, 4 points, something like that. I forget the exact matchup. So would definitely project or predict Williams to win. But it's a game. Again, what we like to do with these things is when you're scrolling down the scoreboard, a game you might skip past, we might say, hey, red light, keep an eye on this game, watch it, follow the live stats, check the score when it's done, because it might not end up how you think it will, or if it does end up that way, the scoring margin might be tighter than you think it is. So this week we're giving it to Williams, but the curse has been broken by Middlebury last week, so I'm sure for the East it's no sweat.
Maybe the NESCAC's immune.
Yeah, I mean, good league, good league. And that brings us out to this week's mailbag. Zach, do you have the question here you want to read?
I do, yes. So we received just one mailbag question this week, and this came in via direct message on Twitter. We weren't able to confirm whether the user wanted to remain anonymous or not, so we will mark it as anonymous. And it says, how do you rank a team like Middlebury, who has shot the ball poorly and has bad metrics, but has found ways to win games?
Yeah, so I'll speak to this one. For myself, as a top 25 voter, I definitely use data. I use metrics. I don't use a lot of individual box score statistics, though, necessarily in what I'm looking at. On a team by team level, I'm not really looking at shooting percentage or turnover percentage or offensive rebounding rate. At a large team level to do my top 25 rankings for me personally, the types of metrics I do use would be the efficiency ratings that I run and that are at the blog site that we typically link to. So efficiency margin, offensive and defensive efficiency I'll use the Massey ratings to see what a team's strength of schedule has been like and what Massey's computer, how it might differ from my own. Again, to see kind of what that offense and defense and total team rating looks like. But I don't really care so much about how a team gets as good as they do. If they're doing it with offense or if they're doing it with defense or if they're doing it with the 3-point shot or pounding it inside. But I'm really just more concerned about overall how good they are. So if you're a bad offense, I shouldn't say bad offense. If you feel like you're a middling offense, but you have a really good defense, for me, you could still be a top 10, top 15 team. It's not really about the shape of that team. It's really just about how good you are. And then when I'm going through my rankings, one thing I try to think about after I group teams generally where they are is who do I think would win on a neutral court. And I'm not really sometimes that's literal, but sometimes that's a little bit figurative. So I'm not really running the matchup of, hey, do I think Middlebury's team is going to match up against Wheaton's team in this sort of like 5v5 sense, but kind of like, how good is the team, and if they played each other or if they played a similarly strength team, who would I think would win that game most often. So this is just a long way of saying that I'm not really looking at that type of data when I'm looking at a team ranking. And I think we've seen from last year, a team like Wabash can get to the Final Four built, in my mind, almost entirely around their offense, and their defense was rated, only average. A team, what's the counter example of that? Maybe to date this year they've started to turn it on a little bit, but UW Oshkosh, they've been off to their 7-2 start this year with a strength of their number one defense, according to my ratings. It's been 1, 2, or 3 most of the year. Their offense is ranked 117. So, if that's, I don't know Middlebury, that well off the top of my head as far as their individual, shooting percentages and the like. But if you think Middlebury is a similar team, and they're getting it done with the defense, they're finding those ways to win games, then I would have no problem ranking them high. I would have a problem ranking a team high if they're maybe 8-0 and they're beating marginal teams by 2 points, 3 points, 4 points. They're finding ways to beat the 200 ranked team in the country or the 300 ranked team in the country. I wouldn't rank that team. But if you're playing a strong enough schedule, you're beating good teams and you're beating the teams that you should by a fair margin, then I don't care how you get there. I just care that you do it. So I hope that answers your question, Anonymous. And if you didn't need to be anonymous, you can let us know and we'll shout you out in response to this episode because we appreciate those questions. Thank you.
Yep. If you would like to submit something for a future mailbag, you can leave a comment on YouTube on this episode and we will find it. Or you can reach out to us on social media, facebook.com/D3Datacast or at D3Datacast on Twitter. And we will pick it up and make it a part of a future show. Well, I think that wraps up what we had planned for this week, Matt. Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you're looking forward to in the week ahead?
I just had the opportunity to go to Wheaton this week to see Calvin and Wheaton. That was the one top 25 versus top 25 matchup on Saturday. Fun environment. Unfortunately, our Calvin Knights couldn't get the win. They lost by 1 point, but it was fun to be there. I got a chance to meet a few people from around Division III. I met a parent of a Calvin student for the first time. I met our friend John Gleich, who we've known from the message boards from D3 Hoops Twitter, former D3 Hoops national champion from UW Stevens Point. He was at the game, so I got to say hi. Got to say hi again to Coach Schauer from Wheaton. So fun to go to those games, Division III types of games. Calvin Wheaton's a fun matchup. We'll get them next time, so that'll be all right. But it was a fun weekend for me.
Excellent. Well, that's all we have for this week. So we hope everyone has a great week in Division III basketball, and we'll be back next Monday.
Good job, team.